Okay, right. Last panel, and this is about resolutions. What will we do differently tomorrow? So I'm going to invite the panel and introduce the panel. But what I'd like you to do is, you know that the thing you were doing to ask questions, you know, what's it? Slido. Don't ask questions. I know we all want to go and have a nice glass of wine or catch our trains and whatever home. But put your own resolutions down. Stick some stuff up for us to respond to. So I'm not going to ask the panel what things they've got as takeaways, what resolutions they're going to make. Tell us what yours are. You can keep it anonymous and humorous, if you like. Right. Okay, who have I got on my panel? I've got Ian Dowds. You're new. I need to introduce you. Ian, CEO, UKOM. That's all. That's what we're going to say about you.
The drinks are on me.
Yay! Oh, are you? You're Richard Reeves, MD of the NOP, voice of the online publishing AOP. Good God, yeah, I'm awfully sorry. It's been a long day. You could be that as well. Yes, the online publishing industry. James. Oh, you're on your way, Wycherley. He's CEO of the Insight Management Academy. He used to be at Barclays Bank, which is quite interesting. And we are now also going to have Mark back and Amanda back. I know.
I feel like a shift.
Okay, can we, Belinda, I don't know if Claire's about, but we need to bring back the thing. We need that back, because what I want is if people can please put their points on there. Oh, do we have to set up a question before they can do it?
There's nothing there at the moment to show.
Can they...
As soon as people start typing it in, it will appear.
As soon as you start typing in, stuff will appear. Feel free, type stuff in as our guys are speaking. Right, so we just want some resolutions, some thoughts, where your head is at. I mean, for me, it's just been so energetic today, and we've heard so much. I suppose for me, my resolution is to run towards it all rather than away. To embrace it all, to embrace the diversity, to embrace the challenges of GDPR, because that's going to be good, to embrace diversity and integration, because that's going to be good. I love Pete's thing this morning, the tension of innovation and the tension that creates in the company. Embrace that as well. So I think that's good. And my other one is being human and actually realising that, you know, all of us in this room, all the people we're trying to market to or get to watch our TV programmes or whatever, we're just all bumbling along in life, aren't we? We're all analog. We're all analog humans, bumbling along in life. We might lead digital lives. We're bumbling along in this cloud of stuff. You know, we've all got kids to go home to, parents to worry about, whatever. And there's all this noise. And people are trying to talk to us and make us get to think things and feel things and do things and use our data and analyse us. So ultimately, we have to respect them. And that's what I'm going to also do, is just really think about the receptivity and the value exchange that we all depend upon in order for all of our lives to be so fulfilled doing the jobs we do. Have I bumbled along to give you enough time to think? Brilliant, okay. You can give a general thought or you can give a resolution. It's absolutely free flow. Do we need to hand this along?
No, mic'd up, I think.
Ian, we're just going to start with you.
Okay, we'll go traditional. Okay. Well, I'm kind of in the Jonathan Allen school of for 25 years of having just sold and bought shit, and just had insight and data there. For the last 2 years at UKOM, I've seen how staggeringly hard work it is to actually deliver it, and I've spent most of the time having my head exploded by massively more intelligent people than me talking about stuff that I don't understand. And what I've really enjoyed today was that those people, still massively more intelligent, brought it back down to some really simple questions. And I really liked "you can't ask why without asking what" from Gerhard Lowe. That made absolute sense to me. And I really liked Nick Jones' give me the bread and butter, but also surprise and delight me when you can. And I think that's the bread and butter of what can be done is so important, and often everyone is drawn away to, hey, here's something really bright and sparkly and surprise and delight, but actually the bread and butter matters just as much. But I also, Richard Lindsay saying AI has to be trained not to pick its nose, I think is absolutely brilliant. which is basically whatever you put in is what you will get out. It still requires a huge amount of human element, but I'm very grateful for the simple messages that came across. GDPR as an opportunity, not a threat for the UK, I think is a very important one. But I shall stop there.
I know, otherwise I'd be none left for anybody else. Thank you very much. Shall we? I don't know whether anyone feels sort of inspired to just jump in. Otherwise,
Well, I quite like that quote up there, bewildering and blizzarding my colleagues with new buzzwords. My vow is to continue to use old-fashioned language and get told off by my bosses for doing so.
know in your heart it's the right thing to do.
Well, no, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I share one of Ian's initial sentiments, which is that I didn't really know what to expect from the day, but I found it hugely reassuring that, you know, we heard from a complete mix, a diverse mix of people that one way or another are involved with data or shaping how we use data and interpret data. And there was a genuine reassurance for me that there's responsibility and understanding about how we move this forward. And I think if we're honest, we're probably the hardest demographic to convince that we can trust the use of data. We are the generations broadly that we are where we're going to be deeply cynical. And I think Professor, I have to say this, it's been bothering me all day. Professor Grindrod, I mean, if ever you could come back as a porn star, would that not be the name that you would want? I mean, Grindrod, how powerful is that? But anyway, he said one thing that really stuck with me, which is the generations are coming through. So if we get things right now, if we do things intelligently and create protocols and codes of practice that broadly, you know, everyone from parliamentarians to advertisers to media owners, everyone are comfortable with, and obviously the consumers. I mean, his observation about the youth, you know, they know they're going to get benefit and they think it's cool. I think that was a really important thing. And a couple of other things, if I may just touch on. GDPR, one person referred to that as it protects the data from becoming creepy. Wiggy, you touched on this as well. For me, GDPR in many ways is actually an opportunity. And I know within AOP and all the initiatives that we've been running on a very regular basis, bringing, again, you know, every cloud has a silver lining. We talk about the impact of the duopoly and everything else. You know what? There's positives from everything, and things like GDPR and the assertion of the duopoly and the threat to elements of our business models as media owners has created a culture where we're more collective and collaborative and more thoughtful about what we're doing. Little point I wanted to touch on, which was something that Simon said earlier, this parenting thing. So going back to that responsibility, I think we're at this stage now where we can set those boundaries, and we do have a job to do on reputation. We need to confirm people. I could go on. We know metrics are wrong. Again, Wiggy, I think right at the end you said something that I found, you know, sums it up, which is knowing how to ask the right questions. That's key. One other little point, if I may touch on, which did surprise me, it took all day to get there, or until the afternoon, which is that we talked positively and responsibly about data. No one had in the morning touched on the fact that it's very easy to corrupt data as well. We mustn't, you know, we talked about leaking continuously, but, you know, some of the things that I've discovered that media owners do with abandoned shopping baskets and other bits of data surprised me. They all acknowledged that they're going to have to tidy up a few things, but I hadn't realised how long you know, we've been able to, if as a savvy user, completely screw up a media owner's understanding or knowledge of who we are just by supplying false information. Of course, we don't think about that. So, you know, there is a balance to this in many ways, but I'll shut up now, so I'll let someone else talk.
Very, very, very insightful points there. Amanda, I mean, you know, tell you what.
It's going to be really hard by the time.
Haven't you?
You've got no chance.
Anyway.
So I think I'm going to go for my selfish reassurance reason. or output or outtake actually, because I think what's been really interesting listening to everybody is that we're all in the same place and going through the same challenges. So whether that is about getting the questions right, whether it's about the culture. One of the things that popped up this morning, and I can't remember, my notes are over there, that popped up was about the resistance of middle management. And I went to a data conference last week where it was all about permafrost middle management. And actually that's a big challenge we face at Time Inc. And, it's that whole turkeys don't vote for Christmas. We're coming along with sort of, sometimes it feels like big torches uncovering things with that data, which is why that cultural change is so important. So even just talking to people out in the network space has just been, I feel like, oh, we're all in together, so that's good. The other thing, selfishly, is it means, I think the focus on asking questions actually did come through, the right questions the whole way through the day. The reason I love what I do is because I love to ask questions. And so I think there is that sort of whole education programme that we need to continually have with our business. And then my other favourite bit was this morning with Nick, which was the transition of where we were as a research team 20 years ago to where we are now. And actually, we should all be incredibly proud of that journey that we've made. And we've managed to sort of evolve and transform along the way. And I think a couple of years ago, I think people thought data would just take over from the insight part, but even data points have smiley faces.
How lovely. I think the points you're making, about talking to management, influencing management, we didn't spend much time on. I think that'd be a really good topic for a future one of these, is actually how you influence and represent yourself in the businesses. So, we heard about, MDs or CEOs, changing every 18 months. And we run really long-term ongoing insight programs, which is the voice of the audience or the consumer or customer, however you want to put it. And that has to be enduring, robust and honest. And it's our challenge and our mission to do that. And that can create the stability and the insight for growth. And that can hold the ship steady where it needs to be, or to move it where it needs to be. And it's really hard. And I think there's some, maybe that's something we can all get together on another time and learn how to do. Because we've got to influence them, we've got to manage them, we've got a reputation job to do, on ourselves and our industry and our contribution to business. Anyway, and that's it. I'm not supposed to be wittering. Mark?
I'm going to hand over and then come last because I...
Oh, you've got a few, because we could look at a few of those, tackle those, and then...
Shall I jump in then?
What would you like to jump in on?
So, I'm going to have a slightly different take on Wiggy's point. Is that okay as we're on the panel together?
Yeah, that's fine.
So, I think my overriding thought is that there's increasingly no room for people to hide in terms of big organisations acting in ignorance. But my supplementary to that is that it's not the first time I've thought that. So back in beginning of 2005, I went through an experience not unlike the one that Amanda described. So I was Director of Insight and Analysis at Barclays Bank. And at the beginning of 2005, I was given the task of pulling together a customer analysis team with a traditional market research team, because traditional was applied to market research rather than insight then. Traditional market research team, but also a competitor intelligence and sort of future-looking trends team. And I thought that was just fantastic. What could not be influenced in the organisation with a combination of those things? Not least because back in the day, I had a database of some 21 terabytes, which I'll have you know was the largest financial services database in Europe back then. You probably have more photographs now on your Macs back home than we have data. But we just thought that the world was our oyster in terms of what we could influence. And I think the history of the sort of 10, 15 years since then has shown, partly for reasons that you've explained, Sue, that it's not as simple as that. You can have the best data and intelligence in the world, even if you do common sense things in terms of trying to join them together, it's still not easy to get your organisations to act upon them in any sort of concerted way. And so I think the two issues that perhaps we've talked about a little bit less today, that I would want to sort of flag as those for future discussions. both relate to structures. So the first structure is the extent to which it's no good just doing lots of more analysis or insight work or research or whatever label we want to give it, unless in doing that we also consciously add to an accumulated store of understanding that we have. And we find time somehow in the busy lives that we have in insight teams, in client-side organisations, to put some structure around that, to edit it, to work out what those customer stories and narratives are, to figure out how the new stuff adds to the understanding that we already had before that, and to somehow build upon the richness that we already had by keeping those stories alive. You used a fantastic phrase about language earlier, and I think it's when the language of the organisation starts reflecting the language that the insight team has built using built upon a joined-up understanding that you really start to think that you're getting somewhere. So a lot of my successes at the bank were not actually ball in the back of the net in terms of we found out something today which nobody knew before. It was hearing repeated back to me a really fundamental piece of customer understanding about how a market worked, how customer behaviour was driven by circumstance or motivation or whatever it was, that was not the result of a particular piece of work, that was hard graft over years of trying to get an understanding of that across to the organisation. Second one, just briefly though, is structures about understanding about how our organisations make money. Because perhaps one thing that we've talked least about today is actual commercial return on any of the work that we're doing. And I know it's been implicit in a lot of what the speakers have said, so that's not particular criticism. And I know that commercial figures are always a difficult thing to talk about on a public platform. But it does seem to me that in one way, joining together research and analysis and different data, although difficult, is not actually the most difficult challenge, because what a lot of Amanda's team will have in common is that they all love detail, whether it's the detail of data that can be drawn from a database, or the detailed understanding of different methodologies in the research world, or marketing mix, or marketing effectiveness calculations, or whatever. And very often that doesn't enable people to look inwards to their own organisation and figure out how exactly it makes money. Research and intelligence, insight within a large organisation is not an academic subject. There is no point in doing any of it unless it adds to the bottom line. And I think the challenge that remains for all of us involved in insight, research, analytics work of one sort or another is to get better at putting our focus on being problem solvers for business rather than people who are just determined to find out more and more about the consumer.
I think that's great because, just asking the question, how much is the answer to this worth to you? Or well, how much are you investing behind the decision that you're going to be making that I'm going to be helping you with? It doesn't have to be anything massively fancy.
No.
Yeah. Mark, did you want
Yeah, I'm going to steal a word from Johnny's presentation. So my sort of commitment is to continue to fly the flag for diversity of data sources and techniques. We've been through a period, I think, where the world of marketing believed that all the answers were going to be in clickstream data, that survey data, sample data, panel data was all going to be in irrelevance. We've come out the other side of that when people working with that clickstream data have recognised its strengths and its weaknesses and its gaps. So yeah, flying the flag for diversity and working harder and joining it together so that it makes sense to people rather than it being silos of different answers.
Yes. Here. Now, let's just see if we need to clean up on any of these points. Would anyone like to add anything at all?
So I'd like to jump on one because I think I should, and I think, to be fair, it was one of those points I wanted to add. But the third one down does not the UK industry trade bodies need to put their heads together like the Dutch, rather than measuring and promoting their own individual media silos. Actually, to be honest, I do think that it's probably not understood as much about how they do work together. I think people do think that we just knock strips out of each other the whole time and are fighting our own individual corners. So, I mean, obviously, within the capacity of UKOM, I sit there on a board with the IAB and also within that environment are ISBA and IPA. within JIC webs, which are obviously driving standards around DTSG, viewability and fraud. Again, it is the, if you like, the proxy for the industry, those 4 trade bodies represented. But I actually genuinely did, and I want to say this, when I saw Irina's presentation, I made a note that I would get her contact details. I want to go to Holland. Okay, it's nothing to do with the grind rod piece, but there may be some additional.
If I can pick up on that, having seen Irina's presence on this schedule and having read what the case study was about, I went out to meet Irina a couple of weeks ago, or tied in an IAB Europe meeting I had, because I said, you have to tell me how this works. Because this is fascinating. Yeah, it is worth pointing out that in the UK, UKOM's data forms the online element of NRS PAD, soon to become PAMCO. So to a certain extent, that's already happening. In terms of video, it's only in the last 3 months that UKOM has endorsed video metrics multi-platform, which means the industry can measure mobile on video on mobile, and we have done that with Google in step with ComScore to do that. So it is starting. One thing again, from the outside, I would have asked exactly the same question. It's not easy, is it, Irene?
Yeah, I'd just like to add, it is not easy.
No.
And it's also, and we are not there yet. And the only way to do that is that each party gets out of this cooperation, gets the data in order to, to be able to use the data in for their commercial purposes. Otherwise, this would not be possible. There are still silos, of course.
Of course.
So, but you can just, I think, get more from the cooperation and still be a competitor to each other. So.
I think that's an important point. I think we have our own agendas of which our responsibility is to represent our membership and affect change and fight those corners. And of course, there are going to be massive differences of opinion. Metrics are one of those. The buy side look at it one way, we look at it another, and this last click attribution is really just bullshit. But I'm curious to ask you, how important were the personalities? Because I've spent most of my career not that bothered about trade bodies, and suddenly found myself running one at the beginning of last year, and then job worth doing properly, and I've suddenly become, in the last 12 months, extremely passionate, but also thought that the legacies that I had inherited, where people said, oh, well, that's never going to happen because they don't this. Well, I've actually found my counterparts to be really collegiate, and there has been churn, so they are new people that my predecessors had to work with. But we I'm sitting in a room saying, this is bullshit. We're actually both working for the same goal here, trying to do the same thing. So why don't we just come together on it rather than, and they go, yeah. So obviously how important were those personalities to succeeding?
Okay, and then we need to move on.
Very important. It's all about people, and it's all about people who want to cooperate. So that's why you're not allowed to use this information yet, because there are still some people who have to be persuaded that this is the best way to go. It's all about people.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, you're supposed to be answering.
I know, but you said you want it to be interactive, you say. So you don't have to reply on Slido to this one. A show of hands will do. I've got to go from here at 5:30 to my son's sixth form open evening. And I know what he's going to do for his first 2 A-levels, but his third one is a choice between computer sciences and English literature. Okay. So, a show of hands. What
are the other two?
No, I'm not going to tell you that. No. Because then you see you'll go down a particular channel of what works best together and all the rest of it. But as a serious point, I'd just be fascinated to get people's sense, and it sort of relates to the question up there about AI.
One of the questions.
There you go.
In a different way.
Different tangent on one of the questions up there, which is about what the role of AI is going to be in businesses, and where human intervention is going to meet what computers can do and all the rest of it. So Who thinks what? Any views that I should take back to my son?
So who says English literature?
What do you want him to achieve?
To afford his mortgage.
I want him to be. No, I want him to be happy and fulfilled in what he does.
Oh, definitely.
Let's ask English literature again.
But I know that's a rubbish answer. It's just that I don't think he knows what that is yet. So I realise it's a general one, but it just seems to be a fascinating issue that's sitting behind quite a lot of what we're discussing.
Very much so.
Isn't reality TV a career choice?
Okay, well, you know what? We've done brilliantly today. I just want to tell you one kind of sweet thing before we go. And it's about my dad. And I've spent a lot of time with him recently. And he's quite good. He's 94. He knows a lot. He spends a lot of time on computers. He bought very recently something for arthritis for mum online. So he's really into it. But I was chatting with him the other night. We'd had a couple of whiskies together. And he was asking me about the cloud and uploading things. And I had him convinced for about half an hour that if he uploaded too much, he's just like filling the clouds up, and they're going to get heavier and heavier, and that's really what the problem with global warming's all about. Too many people. And he was like, and then he sort of, no, he got me in the end, but really for about half an hour, and it was such fun. Next thing to do, next dinner party, start, with that. Are we all right to go with the UKOM drinks? Yes. Okay, so it's over. We can go and have a lovely drink. Thank you so much to the panel. Really thoughtful. Always tough at the end of the day. UKOM buying us drinks, aren't you? Yeah, thank you very, very much. And thank you all. What a day. It's been brilliant. Thank you.